The Eiffel Tower shouldn't exist. The protest was due to the belief that it was unsightly. The engineer in charge almost went bankrupt in the construction, and the plan was to dismantle it after 20 years to become scrap. Today we're going to tell you how the Eiffel Tower went from a useless monstrosity to the symbol of Paris and why it still stands. To start with, this thing here is absurdly gigantic. It weighs 10,000 tons and is 330 meters tall. Just to give you an idea, we have a Titanic in proportional size. It's on the same scale. And look, if we stand the Titanic up, it doesn't reach the top of the Eiffel Tower. But this tower is also really old. It was inaugurated on March 31st, 1889. And it served as the entrance to the Universal Exhibition in Paris. These Universal Exhibitions were events that brought together countries from all over the world to showcase the technologies they were developing. Just to give you an idea of the things that were shown at Universal Exhibitions. The electric locomotive, the first telephones, typewriter, camera, and it was kind of a tradition in these exhibitions to always have a very large, absurdly impressive construction. In 1851, London showcased the Crystal Palace, an iron and glass structure. Paris followed with the Trocadero Palace in 1878. The Statue of Liberty's torch arm was exhibited in Philadelphia in 1876. France naturally had to construct something extraordinary after all this, and they opened a competition to see who could build it. Then, a very cool monument. Iron was not considered a very elegant material because it was used to build bridges and train stations at the time. Today we think it's beautiful. You see images, for example, of Paranapiacaba near Sao Paulo, which has a train bridge, or even the Luz station, but at the time it was seen as too industrial. However, there was political lobbying at the time, and they included in the contest the requirement that it had to be an iron structure with a height exactly matching the height of the Eiffel Tower project, which ultimately won the contest. The engineer responsible for the project was a Frenchman, a certain Gustave Eiffel, who had already built some very cool things, all iron structures. Look, this is the Garabit Viaduct in France. This is the Maria Pia Bridge in Porto, Portugal. He also created the internal iron structure of the Statue of Liberty. The project itself, however, was by two engineers who worked for him, whose names I can't say without reading, Maurice Koechlin and Émile Nouguier. Their idea was simply to create the tallest structure that humans had ever built. They copied our idea of the stick tower, right? To put it in perspective, the Eiffel Tower's main competitors at the time were the Great Pyramid of Giza at 164 yards and the Washington Monument at 186 yards. The problem is that their project was really ugly. The towers carrying electric wires appeared, and Eiffel hired architect Stéphane de Sauvestre, who designed the arches and platforms for people to view from above. He proposed adding restaurants so the tower wouldn't be just a static steel structure. Building with steel made it lighter than concrete, as the tower is completely hollow with a steel skeleton. Using concrete would have required more filling, making it difficult to build such a tall structure. The first engineering challenge was the foundation, deciding what to put under the tower to keep it standing in the Champ de Mars region, or Field of Mars, which is near the Seine River. And that means that the ground there didn't need something very sturdy to hold up for no reason. So they built a kind of containers that were placed on the ground and they injected compressed air. People worked there and inside digging. This technique is called pneumatic caisson. And the advantage is that you can dig even in places that would fill with water. They managed to make a 12-meter deep hole and then filled it with concrete. And the second challenge is precision. Just imagine, 18,000 separate steel pieces. You're going to put everything together, and the tower, besides standing up, it has to be straight pretty, right? So they built all the pieces in a separate workshop and took them to assemble at the construction site. Just to give you an idea, the four legs were raised at the same time, and they were separate. They had to meet here on the first floor. So for that, under each foot, they had a system of pneumatic pistons that could give an exact tilt to them. And the pieces were then joined together with rivets. I swear I thought it was a screw, but no. If you've never seen a rivet before, nearly all the pots in your home probably have them. To attach the handle, this little circular piece, to the pot. So you have two drilled plates to join the two holes to secure it. You put a metal piece inside and hammer both ends. Or secure both ends, flatten both ends somehow. And the thing gets stuck. These rivets here are aluminum, but on the tower, they were iron. And it took 4 people to install. Picture a huge nail that one person heated up while another fit it into the hole. and 2 others had to hammer it from the other side to flatten it and make it stuck. After the rivet cools down, it contracts and everything stays very well stuck. Just to give you an idea, 2.5 million rivets were put in by hand. But there's an even bigger challenge, which was the elevator. For these lower levels, the challenge was a bit simpler because the foot is inclined. So if you look at images of this elevator, it's a kind of funicular, that type of little train that goes up a very steep mountain. But in this section here, you can't put an elevator like that. It has to be vertical. And at the time, elevators worked in a different way. There was a kind of a rod underneath the cabin that pushed it all the way up. So the engine was underneath, not on top. Only it wouldn't be possible to use a rod to lift the elevator all the way to the top. It was too tall. Then they came up with a really cool idea. The rod would lift the elevator only halfway, but this elevator was attached to a pulley at the top that connected to a second elevator. Whenever one went up, the other came down, and vice versa. This system worked in a way almost identical to what we know as an elevator today, with the cabin and the counterweight. So just imagine, here's the elevator with the rod, and the other one is right here on top. When this one goes up, the other goes down. The maximum point of both is here. The person switches elevators, and then it goes like this. The entire construction took 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days, which for Brazilian construction time is like, it's a flash thing. But the tower was delivered on time. It just wasn't an immediate public success. People called it a useless and monstrous tower. The 2 main opponents were artists who protested in the media and local residents who filed a lawsuit against the construction. Eiffel almost went bankrupt because he was paid in stages of the construction, and then it started to delay because of that. He had to take money out of his own pocket. An interesting fact is that when Eiffel was there, all full of problems, lacking money and such, a side job appeared for him to make ends meet, which were the doors of the Panama Canal's locks. And then with that little money, he managed to finish building the tower, which cost 7.8 million francs at the time. In today's money, it would be about 35 million euros, or around 254 million reais at the current exchange rate. As of November 2024, the exchange rate would be 214 million reais. In the construction itself, there were no physical hardships there, no employee died, but there was a strike because of the working conditions. Despite the risk, they worked 12 hours per day, every day of the week. And the craziest thing is that after all this, the idea was that the tower would be demolished. The construction was temporary to last only 20 years. There was a scammer who sold the tower twice as scrap based on this information. Hey guys, they're going to dismantle the tower. Who wants to buy some iron? The tower remained standing, not due to its popularity or people taking selfies in front of it. It was because another technology emerged, which was the radio, and it was perfect for communication tests. It was one of the first radio towers in the world. In the army, it replaced carrier pigeons as a means of communication. But the fact is that in the end, the tower became a symbol of Paris. Just to give you an idea, it receives about 7 million visitors per year. Brazil, despite being a tourist country, received 5,900,000 foreigners last year. However, maintaining this structure is not so simple. Just to give you an idea, every 7 years, a team of 25 people has to paint the entire tower by hand. And this task simply takes 18 months. That's 60 tons of paint to cover an area of about 10 football fields. Some parts of the tower, from time to time, also need to be replaced, and that's why we have a little piece of the Eiffel Tower right in the middle of the Olympic medals from the Paris Games now in 2024. And this one here isn't real, okay? Unfortunately, it's just a 3D printer replica. Up close, the tower appears somewhat brown. It's a color called Eiffel Tower Brown, but it used to be more reddish. And yes, for many years it was the tallest structure ever built by humans. It only lost that title in 1931 to the Empire State Building, built in New York, which is 418 yards tall. That video deserved a thumbs up, didn't it? But wait, you can give a thumbs up, but stay until the end, because now there's some really cool information. The tower has several things installed along it: store, restaurant, theater, but up here, right after it was built, there was a little apartment of Gustave Eiffel. His 100 square meters was large by Sao Paulo's standards, but small compared to the tower's size. It had a living room, kitchen, and bathroom. It was kind of his refuge. It had a sofa, piano, a place to do some scientific experiments. They say he took his friends there but never slept at the top. Some of this space exists today, but it's rarely open for visits. Several photos were taken from that window. Inside, there is a wax statue of Gustave Eiffel, his daughter, and Thomas Edison, who was one of the illustrious figures who visited this secret apartment in the Heights. For you who were holding the thumbs up, the time has come, huh? Thanks, guys. If you're enjoying our technology history videos, the last one we published was telling the story of the Hindenburg. It was simply the largest aircraft ever built in history. The accident was quite serious and worth examining further.